If you're somebody who's uncomfortable with the conversation of sex, this ain't the episode for you. Welcome to the Lips and Language podcast. My name is Cola, where we talk about life, love, and language. Remember to subscribe, like, and share. Let's get into today's topic. So I'm starting a new series, and this series is called God and Sex. And it's not gonna be what you think it's gonna be. It's an honest conversation about my own life, my own history, and just bringing in the moments where I really feel led to talk about when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to emotions and feelings, and most of all, healing, because healing from sexual trauma is really important to me. Not just sexual trauma, but from addiction and pornography and everything else you can think of in between. I find that these conversations are really challenging to have at times, depending on the audience, but they're very necessary to have. I remember when I started writing and talking about my, when I lost my virginity, I was gang raped. If you want to actually hear the story, you can check the video. It's called Cola Chapter 1. It is the first chapter in my book. But I had taken the audio part and I put it up so that people can at least hear the beginning of the story. This is how it all happened. Contrary to popular belief, I wasn't introduced to sex, sexuality, or nothing until I was 14 years old and I was at the bottom of some concrete steps. That was the first day that I was really introduced to anything called sex, oral sex, all of it. And what it did was it left me really unprepared for what was to come. I didn't know how to defend myself. I didn't know how to get out of certain situations. I was just like, oh, what is that? Okay. And I was learning as I went along. I had things done to me that I didn't even know the name of. I had an experience with strangers who it's just wild how it happened. And I look back and I've had a lot of questions since then. I've done interviews. I've talked about it, talked about the assaults, talked about what it was like, talked about the reaction, talked about the rest of it. And what I do know is, it's a process sometimes that we go through. It has been an interesting conversation to have with people who don't understand it, with people who aren't ready to have the conversation. But the thing is, I said this last week, not having the conversations doesn't stop things from happening. Like me not talking about how I fell into this does not stop it from happening to anyone else. And I fell into it because I was just really naive as a child. I love, and not that I thought that any of these boys loved me, but as a child, we're always taught, be respectful, answer people, don't be rude to people. And so out of just being nice, I made myself an easier target, for people who were well older than I was. I was 14 and they were anywhere from, the oldest was 24. I can't even tell you the range because I don't know. If I saw them on the street today, I wouldn't know them. But here's the thing. God designed me as a woman, created me as a female, created me with emotions, created me with a body that grew quickly, that grew breast and grew bum and all these different, and had shape. And the thing was, my body did not come with an instruction manual. Like, it didn't come with this manual of this is how you take care of it. Now, I know for people who are just like, the Bible tells you everything. Yes, there are many things in the Bible, but at 14, I wasn't looking to the Bible to find more out about my body. And it didn't say this anatomy and this, you know what I'm saying? Like, when the Bible says be fruitful and multiply, we know what that means, but that's because we have revelation. That's because we're older. When you're a child, fruitful and multiply can be many, many things. And we have a job as a society to ensure that our youth, and not even just youth, young adults too. Like, there are grown men and women who know nothing about sex and just the different types and just the different ways things can happen, because they've created this bubble and they're like, well, this thing is something that's so evil, I'm not even going to put time and effort into learning about it. And we do ourselves an injustice when all we say is, hey, don't touch this thing. It is out of order. It is not available to you only until when you're married, then you can touch it. But it's like, but then when we're married, how do we turn on something that we were never able to touch before? How do we understand the mechanisms? How do we understand what's happening? Because in between the time that we're told not to touch it and that then there's permission to touch it, our bodies go through a transformation. And we honestly have not been given any, well, I know I wasn't. I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I wasn't given the proper guidelines of how to know to manage my body. Especially because my body drew the attention of older men. I looked older than my age. I didn't look 14 when I was 14. I looked young, but I didn't look 14. And because I didn't look that age, I grew the attention of some really old men whenever I went out. I had such a thing, like, I want to say a hatred for old men, because I'm just like, when I got into certain areas, I just knew. I'm like, I just know they're looking at me. I just know they're thinking about me. And it just disgusted me from my insides out. Because I'm just like, why? And then it's turned into like this disgust from my own body that I didn't understand, and my own insecurities that I'm dealing with. Weight, I'm dealing with this, I'm dealing with that. And all I know is there's weird things happening, but nobody's saying anything. There's no conversations about what do I do with this. And then I learned that sex was something that men wanted. And at a young age, I felt very unwanted. I felt very rejected. Now, I just did a piece this week on rejection, and it's called A Conversation With. And the conversation I'm having is with rejection, what rejection has done to me over the years. And it's not just through one person. It is rejection through the eyes and experiences of many different people, and how it has made me feel, and how it has allowed me to feel disconnected from so many things and so many people. It isolated me in a way that I didn't understand, and I didn't know what to do with, because we also don't teach about what to do with rejection. They just said, get over it, sticks and stones. But there's a real hurt that comes when you're rejected by society. There's a real hurt when you're birthed into a land and people are just like, you're too ugly, you're too big, you're too this. And I'm not just talking about me, I'm just talking about in general, the words that we spew to people. We tell them they're not pretty enough. We tell them they're not tall enough. We tell them they're too fat. We tell them they're too skinny. We tell them they don't have enough emotions. We tell them they're over emotional. Like, we are always so critical about these people. And as a society, we are tearing down the ones who need help the most. So when we feel rejected, we feel hurt. Because it doesn't feel good to not be wanted by peers and people around you. You want to be accepted to some degree, unless you're taught that you don't need to be accepted by everybody. But if you're not taught that, then you're almost just like, why don't you like me? And so going through the world rejected, I got into a space where I wanted to feel loved. I wanted to feel pretty. I wanted to feel in control, mainly because I didn't have control over the rapes and what happened to me. I wanted to have control. And so I got into this thing where I recognized that if I acted a certain way, if I said the right thing, then men would be like, oh my gosh, I need more of this. I want to know more. And then it became like a game to me. But the thing about a game is, as much as you think you're playing the game is playing you. You end up I just ended up being pawns in this game that I thought I was playing, because I was like, oh, I'm the main character. I got this. But somewhere along the lines, I got hooked. And then I started craving and started wanting more. And And it wasn't just sex here. It was, I need to know how to do it this way or that way, or like how to, like, it just overtook. And the conversation of saving it till marriage didn't even become a thing that was even on my mind. Now, I had made some deals with God along the way. I had tried to be the good girl. I had tried to stop. I had tried to do things correctly, the way the church says. And what I got in return was rejection. The church in turn rejected me when I got pregnant. And because that was an outward, like, before pregnancy, they couldn't see the things that I was doing. They couldn't see the things that I did in my own time at night, and how I would stay up all night and then go to school the next day. I was still getting straight A's. So there was no outward example of how I was living my life until I had a child. And my son was almost evidence of the sin that I was committing. And the funny thing about that is, it's not even like I flat out had sex when I had my son. My son was birthed out of pre-cum. And it's just funny how there was a time when I was engaged in sexual intercourse and the condom broke. I think I was like 15, but it was my boyfriend at the time. And I cried. I cried so much. I'm like, God, if you please just don't let me get pregnant, I'm not going to do this again. And so fast forward to this other gentleman. My boyfriend and I had broken up, but I was with this other gentleman, and we were still kicking it. We're still getting to know each other. We're still in like that talking phase. And he had come over, and I was like, look, I got to tell you before you come, I'm not doing nothing. And he was just like, understood. I don't, you know what I mean? And now you find out that that's just the line that they say, just be like, yeah. So you like put your guard down. And then when he came over, it turned into a different conversation. And I was like, no, I'm really not doing anything. And he tried. And just from that little effort, I got pregnant. Did you know that ignoring your self-awareness will keep you stuck and emotionally imprisoned? Man, we go through life with this hustle mentality, going, never taking a moment to stop, to breathe, until life kind of just spirals out of control. But it is time to take control. It is time to experience the freedom of your most authentic self. And I have a gift for you. I have witnessed the tears, the happiness, the joy, the transformation when I have done this workshop in jail, in colleges, in high schools. And I want to offer this to you. So click the link below, get access to the free mini course. There's 4 videos. You are going to enjoy it. And let's get to the other side of healing, because you deserve to show up authentically as you. And so now I had this evidence of how I was living my life. And the evidence allowed even more so a conversation around me to be happening. Now people are talking about me. Now they're talking about my behavior. Now they're talking about how I'm a sinner. Now they're talking about how I don't belong. And so now I'm rejected from the other place, the one other place that I really wanted to be accepted in. So in school, I'm already having an issue. And now in the place that I felt the most at home, I'm still having an issue. Like, it was like, okay, so if nobody wants me, what do I do? And right at the same time that I'm asking myself the question, well, the streets is opening up. There's a newfound love and respect for the talent that I have. There's a newfound appreciation for my hips, my curves, and the things, the conversations that I can hold. There's a newfound appreciation for how my body looks and for my intelligence. And so it became this thing where the ones who wanted me were the ones who got me. But that was never a part of the original design. And so when we're talking about God and sex, when we're talking about sexuality and these conversations, they're not things that we're supposed to run from. They're really truly conversations that we're supposed to have so that the next person can learn from situations like mine. Like, what was I doing having a sex addiction when I'm in my teens? Like, that doesn't even make sense. How does it get to that level? But this thirst for more and wanting to be appeased, this wanted to be accepted, wanting to have a space where I felt like, hey, you know what? At least these people aren't judging me. At least these people aren't kicking me out. At least these people aren't making fun of my body. They actually appreciate my body. They like how it looks and how it feels and the rest of it. It's not okay. Because as I look back, I'm like, so many things were robbed from me that I can't get back now. Now, I could talk about abstinence. That's a whole other conversation. And it's a good conversation to have because we should get to a point, if we're walking in Christ, this is only for those who understand this conversation. If we're walking in Christ and that was once our life, then we need to get to a point where we're like, okay, you know what? We're moving in abstinence. You know what? We're cutting it all off. You know what? We're not going to go back to the thing that had us tied down, that had us like attached and chained to this world that cared nothing for me in the end. In the end, this world cared nothing for me. It had nothing to satisfy me with. Man after man, I had been with. And I had gotten into some other things that I'll talk about in another episode. It was never enough to keep me in a place where I didn't feel lonely, where I didn't feel depressed, where I didn't feel like I absolutely hated my life, where I didn't feel like I needed this to end. And because of the rejection and because of what was introduced to me at 14, I was raped an additional 4 more times. And it's not out of a lack of just being dumb. It was that every time I safeguarded myself in one way, another way would catch me off guard. The first time was a gang rape. The second time was an individual who just refused to take no for an answer. The third time, I had placed myself in somebody's house, but by then I was so spiritually dead. I was just like, well, what's the worst that could happen to me? And boom. The last time it was a boyfriend that I had that I'd broken up with. So like, and not to mention the molestation that happened in between that. I had tried to protect myself, but I was trying to protect myself in my own strength. And protecting myself in my own strength led me further into chaos, led me further into being abused, led me further into this rabbit hole that I couldn't crawl out of because it was so deep and dark and I was being buried with every single man that I laid with. It didn't matter if he said he loved me or he cared. It didn't matter if it felt good in the moment. What mattered was I was killing my soul and I didn't understand it to be that. Because I wasn't fully committed to anybody else but myself. The men that I left with, it wasn't that I slept with, it wasn't for them, it was for me. It was this thing that I needed to get off my chest. It was this power and control I was trying to have, but I kept losing. There's not a time when I think I was ever winning in this game. The only time I won was when I put it down. The only time I won is when I gave it up. The only time I won is when I took a serious look and said, this is madness. And I processed, okay, well, what was the open door for this? What was the open door for this? What allowed this in and what allowed that in? The main thing being rejection. But then the other part was just not understanding me, not understanding who I was created to be, not understanding the beauty of the body that God gave me and the way in which I was meant to take care of it. I didn't learn periods and all these things necessarily from home. I learned it from the people around me. And this is not to say anything against the people that I'm with. Like, my parents are great parents. But as a society, we are doing our people, young people, a disservice because it's both men and women. We don't teach men to say no loudly enough. The last time, the 4th time that I was raped, I had spent a whole week having a conversation with my rapist by phone, because he kept calling my house and kept showing up to where I lived. And I had to have a whole conversation with him, breaking down the difference. And it's not for a lack of him just being uneducated, just being ignorant. He was just uneducated in what the situation was. I had to break it down like, okay, the first time we slept together, was that something that I initiated? He's like, yes. And I'm like, okay, this time, did I initiate it? No. Did I tell you stop? Yes. So why didn't you? And it was like, he's like, well, I just couldn't. The feeling, just the urge took over. And and then the conversation is, well, what happens for women who make fun of men? What happens for women who say stop, but they don't really mean it? And it muddies the area. And so we need to have a clear understanding and discussion of what this looks like, of what a life in a world with sex and sexuality looks like, because ignoring it was not the answer. Ignoring it and just telling people, yo, don't touch it until you get to marriage, it doesn't solve anything. Because what happens if you don't get to marriage? Are we just discarded? Are we not important anymore? Do we not matter because we didn't get to marriage? No, God loves us the same. Now, would he rather we aren't engaging in that type of sin and lust and everything? Yes. But there's a way to have the conversations around it that removes the stigma from it and also lets people know the dangers of being in that situation. I took away something from every person I slept with. Sometimes it was a disease, an infection, whatever you call it. Other times it was spiritual, but I never left unscathed. Like, you add the depression that I had with the depression of some of the men that I slept with, or the anger, and you just created a fireball inside of me that was like knocking to come out. The only thing that helped me, the only thing that gave me peace is when I gave it all up, is when I walked away. And I knew I walked away. I was being tested. I knew I walked away because there was this man. He was beautiful. Like, he was really, really, really handsome. And he had engaged in a conversation with me, but like, can we get together type thing. And I was just like, if I didn't just promise God that I would stop, I probably would. But I made a promise and I got to keep it, and I can't engage in anything with you. And that's how I knew in my heart that I had surrendered to God. Because if he could put, well, not necessarily that God put this man, but if this man could stand in front of me and I'm looking at him, and what once used to tempt me, what once used to have me just like weak in the knees and falling over, I was like, nah, I can't. Then I knew that freedom was on the horizon, and it was just about cleaning up the ideas that I had of myself, cleaning up the thoughts, cleaning up the insecurities, cleaning up the lies that I had fed myself for years, getting rid of rejection, getting rid of the open doors of bitterness and unforgiveness and abandonment, and feeling like I needed a man to lay beside me for me to feel loved. When the man that I wanted back then didn't want me. And it had caused so much more chaos inside of me. But there is a man who brought me peace. And people don't often understand my love for Jesus. They're like, she still got demons inside of her. Man, forget all that. I rock with Jesus because I know where he cleaned me up from. I know where he found me and what he has allowed me to forget. Outside of talking about the book, outside of talking about the chapters, I don't have a lot of recollection of the people that I've been with. And that is God forgiving as far as the East is from the West. He has released me from a lot of these memories that I have to like tap back. Somebody had asked me a question and I had to pick up my book and flip through it to remember what that used to be like. It's not etched in my brain. God has removed it and released me from it. And I know that he wants to do that for so many people. Whoever's going to watch this, I know there's a reason he has me talking about this. Not just because of the history that I have and its knowledge, but because it's important to discuss the things that people don't want to touch. Well, I'll roll up a sleeve and touch it. I'll roll up a sleeve and get right into the conversation about it because, like I said, it is a necessary conversation, and this conversation I wish I had. I wish I had the conversation that wasn't just, well, that's just what God says. you're gonna go to hell if you do it. Because the truth is, sex feels amazing. It's not that as soon as you get into marriage, it feels amazing. No, it feels amazing outside of marriage.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is that we make it seem like it's going to be the dirtiest, grimiest, most painful thing outside of marriage. Then somebody experiences it and it's not.
Yeah.
What do you do then? Do you tell them, oh, I was just trying to scare you off from it? No, we have to be honest about our body and how we feel and about all the parts of us. It is okay to like your body. It is okay to admire different parts of it. It is okay to feel like, you know what? I'm happy I have curves. It is okay. This is how God designed us to be. He didn't make us all the same way for a reason. But it's not okay that we defile it. It's not okay that we don't know how to take care of it. It's not okay that we just let loose. And when I'm saying this, I'm talking about not just sexually. I'm talking about eating, drug habits, alcoholism. I'm talking about everything. Insomnia, not getting enough sleep. It is not okay. God has given us a beautiful temple. All we have to do is take care of it. Feed it, nourish it, love it, say kind things to it, exercise it. Make sure that the work that we do on it reflects not just on the outside, but on the inside as well. And so this series of God and Sex is going to continue. Still coming back to healing, because all the conversation that I have is for healing. All the conversations I have is about releasing grief of stolen childhood, grief of our bodies not being the way we want it to be, the grief of everything is surrounding the deep-rooted emotional traumas that we hold on to. These are the conversations that I love having, because we have to get to the other side of grief. Like, there is no other alternative. There is no other alternative but to get to the other side of grief, which is healing. It is important that we devote our time to understanding better what is going on in our minds, connected to our hearts, and allow it to be released in our bodies. I'm excited about this series. I really am. Like, I'm so excited that God gave me this topic. And when I say he gave me this, he gave me like bam, bam, others as well. And so we finna blow it out. We're going to have these discussions. I want y'all to talk in the comments about your experience with this. Like, let this be a conversation that we start, a healthy conversation on sexuality, on sex, on loving God. Like, you can do both. You can enjoy a healthy sex life and love God too. We just got to do it in the context of marriage and the covenant in which he has provided for us. I'm definitely not going to advocate for sex outside of marriage, because look, it comes with a whole lot that we're not ready for. Sex is something for marriage. It's for a husband, a wife, a beautiful romantic relationship that God has blessed and put together. And man, I am excited for just what God has in the future, not just for me, but for the health of people's minds and states that are going to get this revelation and truly apply it to their lives. And so that's all for me. Make sure y'all come back next week, same time, and we're going to have another conversation. We're going to have another discussion, and I can't wait to get into it. Also, if there's certain things that you want me to talk about, man, I take all my topics from Holy Spirit. I don't ever really just take opinions off the street like that, but drop it down below. I'll pray about it, and I'll see if it's a conversation that I can touch in this season. So, peace, love, and blessings. Y'all have a great night, and we'll see you next week. Make sure you check out the outro. Don't cut off before the outro. Make sure you check out the outro, subscribe, like, and let's get this party started. Bye. What would it look like if we were a people that were healed? What would it look like if we were people that believed in doing the work necessary to remove trauma, to get through grief, and to come out on the other side? Man, we think that therapy is the only way. Therapy is a great way, but there's also a creative way that can help us get through this process. My name is Cola. I am an amazing artist, and I have a program called Restore and Embrace Myself. It is all about the healing and the getting through and the getting over. And if nobody told you, you are special and you are so deserving of so much more in this world. So get in contact with me because I'd love to work with you.